So here with me now, I have got the 2024 North Seek. This is North's Wingfoil offering. It comes in an awful lot of sizes this year. Starts at 48 litres, where there's a little bit of a crossover with the Swell. The Swell being their very low volume / prone surfoil board. So the Seek starts at 48 litres. Every 10 litre increments it goes up to 118 litres, and then the biggest size I believe is a 138, so there's pretty much one of these to accommodate every rider weight and preference. There's actually quite a lot to talk about with this board in terms of design changes, most of which have been very noticeable on the water. A couple of the testing team at Tonic have had a go on this already in a number of different sizes, and some of the changes are quite noticeable. Let us start off with something that I thought that was quite funny. One of the marketing bits for this year was talking about this deck pad, the EVA grip pad that's on here, and the pattern that's on there. Common issue within winging at the moment. People are getting through wetsuits at quite a rate, just going from knees to standing, or if they're not wearing a wetsuit, they're wearing out their own knees. And this was marketed to have had an adjusted EVA grip, which is less strenuous on either the knees or less damaging to a wetsuit, but still super grippy. I was skeptical. I've been sold on the idea. It is really, really quite impressive. Didn't notice any issues on the knees wearing a shorty wetsuit, and yet when you're stood, it is super grippy. We've been riding this with or without straps. There are plenty of strap options. Whether you want to ride it with a more central setup, whether you want it central offset, central inline, it's got inserts for everything. It's also more than big enough pad to ride it strapless and be very, very comfortable. Now, in terms of the board designs themselves, this is one of the easiest boards I've used this year to use in a small size. If I turn it side on for you, you can see it's got a relatively even volume distribution. Yes, we've got a little bit less in the nose where there's just an aggressive scoop to make it sympathetic for touchdowns, but the volume is distributed fairly evenly through the board. It is also relatively wide on most of the board, and it looks so from that front side, but it is still pulled in at that tail. We've mostly been using it in flat water this week, not had any issues with bogging a rail, even doing some really aggressive carves. You know, even on some of the smaller wings, if they're a little bit more high aspect, the wingtips were coming out long before we were ever touching a rail on the water. But we will have a go on these boards in the waves and get back to you. So keep an eye on Tonic Mag review section for when the review of this comes out, and by that time we'll have definitely taken this board out in some different conditions. That volume distribution makes it very easy to balance on a board relative to its size. You know, the bigger ones are going to make it super easy for either the bigger riders or the beginner riders, but you'll be surprised at how small you can go on this. It also, now they all feature this triplane setup. It's very, very subtle. You can just see the sanding line there where it goes from that flat non-concave center section, and there's a very slight bevel. They're calling it this triplane setup, which goes completely flat at the tail at the back there. It is a very, very efficient hull design basically, and again it gets going very early, especially when you pair it in combination with, for example, the surfoil wings, which have a super low takeoff speed. I was very surprised at how I could take one of the 48 litre versions of the Seek with a relatively small sub 1,000 square centimetre surfoil setup and get going even without a lot of power. It does feature North's Dropbox system, speedy on and off the water. It's definitely something that if it's your mast setup and you know how to use this, you kind of just have to loosen it by a couple of turns so that you can slide your setup in the track, bring it all the way forward, take it out, and then when it comes to putting it back in again, bosh, goes on. You don't have to remove the nuts or anything from the mast. It's all very nice and quick. Okay, so we were told this has got PVC stringers that run from that rear foil box section all the way up the board to under the front foot straps. It was definitely noticeable on the water that when I was practicing pumping the foils and dropping the wing and just testing out the pumpability of the different ranges of foils with these boards, the response that you got from driving the front foot down was immediate. It's definitely a very stiff laminate schedule. It does feature a high quality Gore-Tex vent plug on the top there, so it's one of these vent plugs that mean that you won't have any DLAM issues when you're traveling, when you're in hot climates, when it's there on the beach in the sun all day, no problem. And with it being a Gore-Tex membrane one, there is no adjustment required. You don't have to unscrew this, screw it back in. From factory, it's set, it'll be fine. Another feature of the deck pad, you have this sort of visual indicator of obviously front foot standing area. This might be, this may well be your back foot during takeoff standing area, more applicable to the smaller boards, and then the darker area at the back where you see you got your foot strap set up, that might be a high-speed riding back foot standing area. Having said that, even though they've provided that visual indicator of foot position, one of the things that was very evident was the compatibility between different foil sizes and different foil ranges in terms of your mast position on the box here. And actually, I found this to be pretty accurate in terms of a recommendation of mast position. So they've got these plus minus indicators on the bottom of the board. The middle setting is recommended for an 80 kilo rider. I'm slightly above that, so I went with this +2 setting, ever so slightly forward of that central position for a little bit more lift. And through different foil sizes of the same range and through completely different foil ranges, I genuinely was finding that that mast placement was consistent for how I like to ride it, given foot strap positions through the whole range. So that's something that's quite convenient. You're not going to have to find yourself putting the mast in a different position, or if you do go out, you go on a bigger foil because the wind is lighter and then the wind picks up and you want to change to a smaller size of that foil range, you just take the front wing off, put it back on. You don't need to change the mast position. It's still going to feel balanced front to back foot in the same way. So yeah, that is the 2024 Northfoil Seek. Definitely one to consider. As I said, if you want a more detailed breakdown review, head to Tonic Mag.